Rural America is said to be a hidden gem for escaping the grinding machine of big cities that chew up and spit out its residents. A place where the beauty of nature still grows wild with color and life. But is it possible being too far off the grid has its consequences? I was a rookie policeman for a small city named Katy, just outside of Houston, Texas. Our population was growing, but crime was at an all-time low. Katy, Texas was well known for its laid-back atmosphere and friendly neighbors. Being a rookie cop had lots of downsides. You pretty much did all the crappy work that no one else wanted to do. I even had to scrub the toilets from time to time. It was not glorious work. One day I was ordered to clean out the storage room. It was a large storage space about the size of a 2-car garage that held our old equipment, banged up gear, and evidence that had no more use to us. It was a hot Texas day and I was sweating my ass off in there as I cleared out over 20 years of junk. I was taking a break from the moving and I saw something interesting sitting in a pile of old computers. It was some kind of old radio receiver. It looked like it was from the 80s. I was curious, so I walked over and checked it out. I plugged it into the wall and surprisingly it turned on. It mostly made some static sounds, but then I started to turn the dial and picked up something weird. It was some kind of SOS broadcast. It just repeated the same message over and over again. It said,
"This is Roger Wilkins from the town of Brio, Texas. We are locked in."
And then it cut off with several seconds of static. And then the message repeated over and over. I went to my supervisor and played him the same message. After hearing it a couple of times, he didn't seem fazed. He said it was probably a prank and went back into his office. I checked on the newer radios we had to see if I could pick up the same distress call. I found nothing. I was kind of in shock that my supervisor showed no interest. I thought the name Brio sounded familiar, so I looked it up. I found an old website from the 90s that mentioned the town. It said Brio, Texas was an old ghost town. About 30 years ago, the town was built over a toxic waste dump. After a few years, people started to get sick and babies were being born with weird deformities. If you don't believe me, you can look it up yourself. I just found it weird that there was no other history about this town. Could the whole town have just fallen through the cracks? Did something happen there and they couldn't get help? I was obsessed about what could have happened and I had to go check it out. It was late at night when I finished up and there was only a couple of people left at my station. I decided to take a police car and go visit the area. Since the town wasn't on any online maps, I had to sew pieces of information together that I found online. I had a rough idea of where it was, but it would take about 2 hours to get there. It was almost 2 in the morning when I arrived in the Brio area. I didn't see any signs of life or even a gas station for an hour. I was truly in the middle of nowhere. I suddenly saw a very tall metal gate that was closed off. It had all kinds of warnings about no trespassing and government property. It said the site was highly toxic and would lead to death. Behind the gate, I could see a large wooden bridge that led to the town. The only way in would be to ram into the gates. I backed up my police car and then went full speed into the gate, breaking through and spraying chunks of metal everywhere. I slowly drove over the wooden bridge, which creaked and felt like it could collapse at any second. Under the bridge was a rushing river that looked like it would swallow and digest anything that fell into it. As I passed the bridge, I came to an old sign that said, "Welcome to Brio, Texas. Population 330. I decided to first stop at the police station, since that's where the broadcast was coming from. I pulled into the main street and noticed right away that the whole town seemed to be burned. It looked like some kind of massive fire had broken out. I pulled up to the small police station and got my gun and flashlight ready. As I walked up to the police door, I heard a voice coming from inside. I quickly walked to the door and soon realized it was locked tight. I got my gun out and blew the brains out of the lock. When I got inside, I noticed the radio was what I had heard making the noise. I thought to myself, if the radio was on, there must be electricity here. I flipped a switch and all the lights in the building turned on. I walked over to the radio that was repeating the message. Next to it, I found a tape with the words "last message" written on it. I put the tape in and pushed play.
I've tried contacting every single government agency and no one gives a damn about us. 3 nights ago at about 9:59 p.m., something came from the sky and crashed by L. Rich's elementary school. Whatever it was that fell, I can tell you this. It was no meteor. It was made of some kind of metal and it's leaking something green all over the place. Now I got almost 300 people out here sick. Their skin is melting right off their bones. I've locked myself in the basement. The people have gone mad.
I stopped the tape to think for a few seconds. According to the papers left on the desk, this incident happened around 1996. It had been almost 35 years since the incident had occurred. How was it possible this was never discovered or even talked about? I knew it would be almost impossible for anyone to survive so long here, but I decided to check the basement to see if the sheriff's body was still there. The door had been locked pretty tight from the inside, but age had started to rot the wood around the door. I kicked and kicked until the door finally opened. As I walked down the creaking stairs, I could smell the old, thick air. And then I saw someone, a figure, sitting in a chair. He seemed dead, but his eyes were glowing, a light green, and looking right at me. I heard his stiff body attempting to move. He uttered only 2 words. "Leave now." I kept asking him what had happened. I said I would get help, but he just kept saying, "Leave now." I reached for my radio to call help, but something was blocking the signal. All I heard was a weird static, almost like there was a jammer in the area. Suddenly, the officer lunged at me from the chair. He made a horrific sound. I pulled out my gun and shot him 3 times in the chest. As he fell, his body fell apart into dust, as if he never existed. I had then decided it was time to leave. But before I left, curiosity got the best of me. I wanted to go check out the old elementary school where this thing supposedly crashed. After about 5 minutes of driving around, I finally found it. I pulled up to the school and was in shock at what I saw in front of me. In the playground, there was a giant 30-foot crater in the dirt. As I walked closer to the crash site, I felt some kind of static sensation inside my whole body. At the bottom of the crater, I could see something, a large, shiny object in a pool of some kind of glowing green substance. I tried to get closer and closer, but the static feeling was so strong it felt like my brain was rattling in my skull. As I took a few steps back, I could see something in the broken ruins of the elementary school. Several sets of glowing green eyes were staring at me from the darkness. I got into my car and was about to leave, but the battery was dead. Every electronic component in my car had been fried. I tried and tried, but nothing. I then heard a rumble from the crash site. The green light grew in intensity and made a loud humming sound, like a calling. I got out of my car and rushed to find a hiding spot in a broken down house. After about 5 minutes, I saw 200 to 300 people walking in the dark towards the glowing crater. They all seemed dead, except the glowing green in their eyes. I was curious what this whole thing could mean. Was it feeding them, keeping them alive? Or was it saving them for some kind of evil plan? They all just stood there, motionless, around the green glow. I figured this was my best shot to run and get the hell out of this town while I could. I ran and ran until I finally made my way to the bridge. But it was gone. It had completely collapsed into the raging river below. I just stood there, staring at the rushing water. My only chance to escape was gone. I had nowhere else to go. I tried my radio over and over, but couldn't get through to my station.
It's now June 30th, 2020. I'm hiding in the basement of the Brio Police Department. If anyone hears this message, please send help and bring backup.